all over the country, and particularly here in Indianapolis, Chicago area. And I have my superstar panel member today, Attorney Vanita Banks. And we'll have some other special guests on the show today. There are so many hot legal issues that wrapping into existence this week. It's almost like you need a scoreboard to keep up with all the things that are occurring on a rapid basis. Um, but I was trying to get one of the senators to talk about in Indianapolis, the most glaring thing that with the vote on redrawing of the maps for the congressional races next year. As you know, we talked about this once before. Census is done every 10 years. And when census are done, you could look at the population in each congressional district to make sure that it's proportional. Like, for example, if we had, say, hypothetically, there was 100 million people in the United States, then you divide that by 435, and each congressional district should have proportional representation based on the population of the entire country. And the problem that exists is that the census is done every 10 years. So when you do mid-census appropriation of congressional district and seats, I don't think it's a true scientific validity to make sure that you have a proportional amount of representation in each congressional district. And so what happened is the Indiana House last week voted to have the state maps redrawn. And the insulting thing about the map that they drew would have had 4 congressional partial seats out of Indianapolis. So in other words, Indianapolis congressional representation, they were trying to eliminate it by basically putting the rural areas that traditionally voted Republican to eliminate representation of the largest city in the state. Indianapolis is about 18 to 19% of the state's population. And based on what they were proposing, Indianapolis would have had 0 congressional representation, and that was the goal. Now, the 19 Republican Senate members in Indiana voted to adopt the House version, and 21 Republicans voted against it. And then they had 10 Democrats, so the total vote would have been 31 to 19. And I like to thank the Republicans who voted to upheld the law, and also fundamental fairness dictate that we have some form of democracy. But as a point of departure in this is, Attorney Banks, what's also equally important is that the results of the proposed redistricting would eliminate the possibility of having minority representation in Congress. And that's the whole story in a nutshell. Attorney Banks, go ahead.
Absolutely, Attorney Lee. And as a Hoosier, born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, I slept much better Thursday night. And I'm sure that many Hoosiers slept much better Thursday night as a result of, I believe, the courageous action. And I'm hoping it's a bellwether for legislatures across the nation that are faced with this redistricting issue. As you know, we're so pleased that the Indiana Senate resoundingly rejected the proposed redrawn map, uh, actually rebuking the administration's bullying redistricting effort, despite death threats, swatting, veiled threats to withhold funds from the state. The Senate stepped forward courageously by a resounding vote of 31 to 19 in favor of democracy for all the reasons, Attorney Lee, that you stated. The census are done every 10 years, and despite the pressure from the vice president who visited your state at least twice, right? And threats from the president, uh, the majority leader of the House, and others, the Senate stood ground. And I would recommend that everyone listen, and it's on a YouTube video, to the powerful speeches of the Senate prior to the vote. And I was impressed with many of the speakers. You know, one speaker stated that any party that cannot run and win based on their ideas and policy is just not worthy of governing. And also, Hoosiers did not ask for redistricting, and that the redistricting map is just simply not representative of Hoosiers. The map had been fairly drawn, and it just was unacceptable to try to redraw it at this point for political reasons. And to your point, um, there are what is it, 7-2 in terms of Indiana's representation in the U.S. Congress. And this map would have diluted the uh, vote in Indianapolis, as you stated, is what you stated, 18%, as well as would have negated representation in Northwest Indiana, which includes Gary and Hammond. And so the 7-2 map would have been redrawn to 9-0. And as you stated, would have combined urban and rural issues, and time zones would have been, impacted. And just um, unfair redrawing of the maps would have negated the will of the voters in Indiana. And so I'm so happy that the members of the Senate, they listened to their constituents and they voted the way that they did.
Well, excellent summary, Counsel. But there's one other thing I need to tell the audience. Now, why is this so important? Uh, we're 18 to 19% of the state population. But here's how important your vote is in a matter like this. Last time I looked at one of the problems we have, particularly in Indianapolis, is that we have a lot of potholes from time to time. Today, I drove, and what was unusual, I did not see a single pothole today. And that's a rarity. Normally, there's potholes everywhere. Well, the reason why funding for road repair is done by a state legislator. And about 5 years ago, when I looked at the funding for road repair, I discovered that the city of Carmel had about the same amount of money in their budget for road improvement and street improvement than the city of Indianapolis. Doesn't make any sense. They're like 20% or 18% of our population, and they had the same amount of money. Why? Because they have significant representation in the state house, and they divert government funding to them and to the neglect of our roads and things like that. So your vote, particularly in this mid-year election, is paramount. I want to make sure that you start to develop a plan early on. Now, the other hot issue, I got superstar attorney Robin McCoy, whose office is in Washington County, Michigan, and their city became the news capital in America with the termination of famed football coach Sharon Moore. Attorney Robin McCoy unwrapped this situation that occurred there in your city. I know you're close to the courthouse. What's going on there in Michigan?
Well, good morning, Nate and Benita. It's good to see you, or well, see Nate and hear from Benita. Yes, I don't even know where to begin. I'm a Michigan alum. I was raised on Michigan football, and I'm like, it's, and I know you sent me that text because we just had that situation at MSU with Mel Tucker. And I'm just like, what? And it was I don't know if somebody put a curse on Michigan football. Whoever put the curse on us, we need to pray it away. And I don't know. There's different responses. I'm hearing from some folks in the community, like, oh well, he wasn't with a sister anyway. This is what he gets. Why couldn't he just have? He had one snow bunny. Two. He needed two. He was too greedy. I don't know. I mean, it's just. I think. I know you and I were talking off the air about his wife and his kids and the football players. I just wonder, you have that new football player, the brother that's out of Belleville. And so it's just as a Michigan fan, I just feel that it's like
Sound like you're heartbroken and traumatized by this.
I
Well, tell you
am. I'm
what,
like,
here's
they
the
mess.
thing.
It's like what we had Harbaugh. They were together. They were winning, and some people I mean, a lot of us feel like, what is it? Did somebody pay these women to mess with our coach? Like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? I don't know. I mean, I can't even begin. He's a coach. He's under a lot of stress. There's a lot of scrutiny, and so I can't. They said that he's having some mental health challenges. You see a lot of white men doing crazy stuff, and they don't demonize him like they're already doing with Coach Moore. It's like they're demonizing him. And my mom was like, yeah, he's the brother that's getting the high-tech lynching now. And I mean, it doesn't excuse, obviously, if he's the
Yeah,
infidelity
but
with his
it was
wife.
totally
And
embarrassing to see him in that jail cell. And, it was horrifying to see this guy who has a base salary, what, of 9.5 million, plus he has other secondary income, maybe he clearing about 11 to 12 million dollars a year. And he's in a jail cell at an initial hearing that publicized all over the internet. And he had on jail garment. And what, he got two misdemeanor and one felony. And
it's
I mean,
like,
you were satisfied with the fact that his bail was $25,000 cash, and they had a lot of conditions, and I don't know, it was a terrible look to me, for a person of that celebrity status to be incarcerated, and the circumstances I thought was really bad. I mean,
well, when you
now,
say, let's get back to the bond, you said 25,000. What you thought he should just have a personal bond? Is that what you're
well, I
Or
don't
thinking?
know.
released
I
on his
mean,
own
Prior record that you're
recognizance?
aware of?
Or
well,
released on his own
okay, what do they do
recognizance?
with a typical case in your town for a person charged with the same thing?
A felony and two
I
misdemeanors.
I think I would say this, what from again, I know he's got Joe Simon. Joe Simon is a very good attorney. He's done a lot of trainings over the years. He used to work with the public defender's office, so he's got a very good attorney. So I would say that it depends on where you are, and it also depends on the media scrutiny. So yeah,
$25,000?
no, no. What let me say, it depends on in Michigan. It depends on where you are, it was before the magistrate, and there's all this media attention. We had a case where there was a. I have that case with the little boy that got shot by the neighbor, and there was a really low bond and for him initially, and then it got blown up in the media, and then they increased the bond. So media scrutiny makes a difference in terms of what happens with the bond situation. I'm hearing different reports. They're saying that the alleged mistress, that she was related to a higher up at the Chicago Bears. So it can oftentimes it can factor into like who is the victim, how connected is the victim. With the university, like some people are saying, like if we had won the Ohio game, then it wouldn't be like this. He would have had a whole nother scenario. They probably would have tried to sweep this under the rug. I think with Joe Simon, hopefully they can still do that, where he walks away with maybe one misdemeanor. As far as paying money out, I mean, Michigan's gonna probably have to pay money out to the mistress. His wife, I don't know that his wife and kids, they survived this. He's looking at divorce. And so it's just, this is not the kind of attention that Michigan needs, U of M needs
Yeah,
right.
but here's a question though.
Some people
For
might say
a
it's karma
typical,
though, because they're getting rid of DEI, and a lot of people are like, okay, they put all this emphasis on having brothers come and play on a team, but they're not really giving support to the black students that are there, and they've been firing black staff, and there's a very very big anti-black climate at U of M. They've been firing black staff. There are lawsuits that are pending. It's an anti-DEI climate. So some people in the community would probably be saying this is some karma on Michigan. I don't know.
yeah, but my question is, if you have a typical client in Washtenaw County come before the court with a low-level felony and 2 misdemeanors, do they pay like a $5,000 bond or do they get OR? What is the typical treatment?
I mean, again, I don't know Coach Moore's back. I mean, my understanding he has no prior. So yeah, I mean, I think that well, again, that's why that would be something for people to study. Maybe study the cases that are happening and what the media cases versus the non-media cases. And so I can definitely tell you with all this media attention, yes, they're gonna have more scrutiny. You're gonna have different camps from the community. You're gonna have some women from the Me Too era that are probably gonna be pushing, saying his bond is too low. It should be $1 million bond, and try to increase the charges. And then you're gonna have some folks that are like, no, this is too high. It needs to be a PR bond. Why is he getting treated like this? If he's having a mental health breakdown, it's winter time. A lot of people, as a criminal defense attorney, I do have clients that kind of wig out. And what I have to do with them is I have them see a psychiatrist, see a therapist, get whatever help they need. I mean, again, I don't know all the facts. I haven't read the police report yet. I
Well,
think
wait a
that
second, let me have Attorney Banks. You may have a question, Attorney Banks. Go ahead.
Well, I think we have to wait till all the facts come out in this case because I heard that there was an investigation. This is what I'm just reading in the media. And so I think we have to, pause on any rush to judgment. And I think Attorney McCoy has set forth a lot of different potential, a lot of issues that really have to be fleshed out. I understood just based on what I'm reading that in October there was an investigation and the coach and another person, maybe it was a staffer, if I'm not mistaken, were interviewed, and it was determined that there was no evidence that there was a inappropriate relationship, which is barred by the university. I also read that a staffer's salary went from $50,000 to $90,000. I don't know if this is the same, if this staffer is the same person in whose home he allegedly entered. I just don't know all of those facts. Robin may have more information.
Well,
And
I
so,
heard, yeah, sorry to interrupt. I heard 80,000. That's the only thing that
okay,
the
okay, 80 as opposed to 90, but there was a substantial increase in salary. And a question that I've had as I look at accused defendants in courtrooms, I look at Mr. Diddy's attire. I look at the attire of Coach Moore. I look at and I contrast that to the attire of the accused killer of the United Healthcare CEO, who's dressed in a nice shirt and a tie, and other white defendants. And I was wondering, defense attorneys, what accounts for that difference in attire?
I think, well, this was the magistrate. This was the first hearing. So now he's been released, and so now like I'm sure Nate would say too. For what I tell my clients, you better wear a suit. You better clean it up, shave it, whatever. You got to look the cleanest. I mean, you shouldn't be judged on the way you look, but unfortunately, that is the reality in America. You got to look a certain, and in these criminal courts. You've got to look a certain way. You got to look a certain way. You got to dress a certain way. You got to speak a certain way. You got to be very polite. No shenanigans in court. No funny business. you're going to get a better result. Yeah. So I think that he was dressed that way because that was the first hearing. I will say this, okay, because I know, Nate, you're asking what usually happens. What I usually have happen is I have people in an ideal situation is people reach out to me before all the drama is going on. If they reach out to me and if I get it's whisperings about stuff, I'll call the police. I won't have my client give a statement. I'll try to see what the police are saying, and then I will sit down with my client. I will see what's going on. I will ask the police to give me a heads up, and I will walk my client in and I will walk my client out. So I guess, Benita, to your question, that is saying that it's like almost like they set him up. This is a different scenario because they're treating him like a everyday person, and well, I wouldn't even say I represent a lot of everyday people. They're treating him differently. They are, because they could have set it up for him to get a suit and wear a suit at the arraignment before the magistrate. I think it's to me, I just feel like some people are like after he lost the Michigan game, it's like he's toast. I mean, even though it's a 93, it's like we're winning. Okay, Ohio, but Ohio in Michigan, Ohio is a beating Ohio. We beaten them. I think what they say the last three times, and then this time we lose. It's a big deal. It is a big deal. So I just have it's like different levels of emotions. Like I said, I'm an alum. I love Michigan. I was raised on Michigan football. I think about the players. I think about the students. How the students don't need this kind of scrutiny right now. Now, Michigan does need scrutiny because the issues with the anti-Black issues that are going on at campus. Students need to feel secure and safe. African American students, students of color. There's anti-Black sentiment, there's anti-Semitism going on, there's just anti-Muslim. This is, if you look at the news, I know, Nate, you guys were talking about politics earlier. We're in a very xenophobic environment right now. I'm concerned about the young people. How are they reacting to all these issues? And I know some of them are just not watching TV. They're trying to lay low, but then this is kind of like blasting in your face. And I just think of other young Black men that are out there like that with Coach Moore. He has so much promise, and to be taken out in this situation, it's like we know if he was really like a celebrity type, he probably would, everything would be handled behind the scenes. There would be a quiet settlement and make this all go away. Or if he had won the game, it'd be a different story. But he lost the game. They lost. They still have a freshman player though. We need time, and I'm like, who are they going to get as a coach? And I don't know.
They were 9-3 this year, which was one of the top records. They were one of the top 20 teams in the country. And if they had beaten Ohio State, they'd be competing for a national championship today. So he had a very successful season, maybe not by these overhyped Michigan fans, but that was a very, win with the competition that they're involved with. They won some key games, and 93, of course, they lost to Ohio State, but everybody else lost to Ohio State except Indiana. So, I thought that he had a very good season, and unfortunately, he's not in the national championship. But my concern, you said something else, though, that was, I think, more concerning. You indicated that there was a large group of Black faculty members terminated, but on the football team, they're populated with Black players.
Right. Oh, it wasn't just, I'm not talking about the faculty. I'm talking about like the DEI people, Black. Well, there's faculty. There's a class action law going on. We're planning to set up a meeting with the Black Bar here to meet with those folks that are affected, that are at the university, because there's a lobbyist that came in, and there's like and they've been doing racist stuff, and it's anti-Black. They fired an administrator because she misspoke. She said some things. She was taken out of context, but then there's a white lady that was saying some things that were really racist, and she didn't challenge. She didn't, it's just it's a mess. And I think about students, players, this kind of climate it's just not a healthy climate. And now you got the Black coach. We had a team just cheer on, and now he's getting taken out. It's a high tech lynching. And I know people will say, Robin, because I know my sister sent me this video where they were talking about all these celebrities, black guys that are messing over black women. And I understand. I do family law. I represent women that are victims. I'm not saying that if you do wrong, you can't victimize women. But if you commit wrong, then you should have redemption. We have clean slate here. We have expungement process. And so, but what we can do ahead of that is, and an ideal scenario for Coach Moore is that he has Joe Simon, that they get this case, they settle the civil case and the criminal case quickly, and he can just move on. And my dad was saying that he probably gonna have Coach Harborough probably gonna bring him, pull him over to where he is, or take him with him, and so they can go win for the pros and just try to make this situation go away. But then where does that leave Michigan? Where does that leave us?
Wait a
You know,
second. Hey,
with a winning.
Imhotep, you got a question for us today. Go ahead, Imhotep.
Thank you for taking my call. And being almost 60 years young, these incidents just harken back to when we learn. I can say some other things, being an Africologist and a student of the Minister Louis Farrakhan, but I'll leave those there. Couple of questions legally. One, why wasn't a young? First of all, she's not a victim. She's an adult. She never claimed that there was any essay involved or anything like that. So she was a willing participant. Come on, I work around women. I'm a healthcare professional. I work around 90% women, and I have discussions with. I'll be by myself, and once I have these discussions from the male side of view, then they like, oh, you know what, you got a point. If you're a willing participant, that's like the no snitching rule. If you're a willing participant in the crime, you don't get fair favor. So why wasn't she fired? She violated the contract or violated the code. Like any of our jobs, I don't mess with superior. Well, I'm married. I don't mess with any coworkers, period. But even if I wasn't married, I just don't believe in messing with coworkers. So she messed with a coworker, so she violated some type of issue there as far as some employment purposes. But that's where Me Too lacked. We saw with the Boy Scouts case, 60,000 boys abused. We saw with the Catholic priest, millions, if you go to France and everybody else, millions of young boys abused. Girl Scouts would throw them in there too. Yet things like Me Too focused only on women, and they forgot about boys and little boys especially. So, when we talk about, let's keep a balance here on what's going on. She was a willing participant. Why wasn't she fired? And in fact, I didn't hear about a lawsuit. Can you fill me in on what this lawsuit is? Because I knew a lawsuit was coming. I know that the next defense is to file a lawsuit. And then lastly, why isn't DEI filtering down to the field? I want it to filter to the field. I want to see it happen, because we know nobody's going to watch all white teams. It's just not going to happen. They don't have the talent. They don't have the athleticism. We know they're not going to watch. So what are the players saying in these big time schools? Why aren't the players and the parents putting really, because the pushback and the boycott starts with the people who have the power and have the talent, who have the marketable skill. So why aren't we able to get this pushback from our players and our athletes to where we don't have these policies affecting the students and the faculty and things like that? Because I want to see this anti-DEI happen on the field. I'm ready to see it, and it hasn't happened yet. Why isn't there a stronger pushback from the athletic point of view? Thanks for taking my call.
Okay, thank you. I will say this. I'm not aware. This is me just because I'm a lawyer and I'm reading the tea leaves from before. I've not heard anything about there being any lawsuits. I'm just anticipating the lawsuit. But to the caller's question, I think the distinction here is that if he was her boss and she was an employee and he had power over her, and if she can make the allegations that it's a hostile work environment, and then I will also say this, I mean, put my criminal defense attorney hat on. It is unfortunate because a lot of times you get one side, you get the victim calls and gives a statement, and you don't always get the other side of, like one of the first things I do with my clients is I will get their side of the story. And I will try to make sure that the system is aware of that, because a lot of times if you wait till the time you get into trial, it's like like you see what's happening in the media. In the media, it's like he's lynched. He's guilty. He cheated on his wife, allegedly. He's already guilty, signed, sealed, delivered. Fire him, jail him, take all his money. He needs to get, I would say, Leonard Mongo. He's a civil rights attorney. He needs to get a civil rights attorney to come in there to protect him. And,
Okay,
I don't know if
Pierre,
y'all.
Pierre Pulling, I have a question also for you. Go ahead, Pierre.
I really didn't have good morning, everybody. I really didn't have a question. I just had a comment, and my comment is, to these black men who get these coveted high position jobs, you need to act like you got some sense. I mean, there's the only people that I feel sorry for is his wife and his children. That's it. It's a complete embarrassment. First of all, you're her boss. Okay? So whether she was a willing participant or not, she's your subordinate. Okay? So, first of all, you should have never hired her in the first place. Out of all the talented people in Michigan at the University of Michigan for him to hire, he never should have hired her in the first place. Having a white woman that close to you, I mean, come on. So I guess where he messed up is when he went over to her house, threatened her, kicked the door in, did whatever he had to do, But he don't need a civil rights attorney. He needs a good criminal defense attorney. He had no right going over there, even if she did mess his life up, kicking the door in and going off. That's where they're going to get him. And I just hate seeing this, man. It just makes me sick. Jim Harbaugh, the white man, set you up with $1 million, multi-million-dollar a year job, and you blow it. If I was Jim Harbaugh, I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole, but that's me. Maybe Jim Harbaugh is a different person. He needs a good criminal defense attorney. And, I'll let everybody else call in because it just sickened me. I mean, how many times are we going to go through this?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Pierre. Yeah, I'm here. I've been watching some of the sports channels. I'm hearing there are a lot of brothers. There are not just brothers, football fans, men that are just kind of like upset because it's like, like you said, we've had the Me Too era. And obviously as a woman, there are women that are legitimately harassed and mistreated. And so we do want them to have a voice. I just finished listening to Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl. And that was intense. But I will also say this. I know the other caller was talking about what about the male victims? I've represented children and grown men that have been victims of sexual assault, physical abuse, and we do need to make sure that we bring attention to these issues because I do have male clients. They are afraid to come forward when they get abused because particularly I have like family law cases. They're like, well, I'm the man. I don't want to call the police on the mother of my children, but then she'll call the police. All she has to do is call the police, and then it's like there's an automatic belief that everybody believes the woman a lot of times, and that's unfortunate. And that's why I know what Vanita was saying that he should get a crisis management attorney, Judy Smith. I do crisis management myself. I do a lot. It's oftentimes you have clients that get into these messy situations and they need to be fixed. It needs to, I know some people are upset like with brothers because it's like y'all was out there, and as a sister, to me, it's like, oh, you're not even with a sister and you already had one wife and then you had to go and get another one. And then some people are saying they look alike and all that. But for me, like when I often have brothers that come to me when they get in trouble and they would sisters or with white women. And the first thing I say, I can't help it because I'm a mother's child. I'm Afrocentric, but I'm like, well, you should have gotten with a sister in the first place, but I'm like, I'm okay.
Well,
but I'm like,
here's the problem though.
I'm like, come on, baby, bring your money, and then come on, let's fix this situation. Let me fix it. And I fix it for him. I help him get it dismissed.
Attorney McCoy, here's the problem though. He made a relevant point. That is that she's a subordinate,
Right.
and having sex with a person who you're a supervisor, won't that result in a substantial settlement for the young lady? Uh, Regardless of what people may be upset about this, I was just thinking in terms of legal parameters. In your state, for example, I, I bet there's 100% probability that she's going to be filing a claim for damages, and they're going to pay her a substantial sum of money. And I saw a report that she kept all the texts and all the voicemail, and so she kept a trove of evidence to prove the relationship. And so you don't do that. That's intentional. In
That's
other
a
words,
motive. That's why I said, is it a setup with like Mel Tucker too? Mel Tucker lost his job. It was phone sex. Okay, he was married to a sister, but it was phone sex. He lost his job. And it's like these brothers don't understand. They are marks. People mark them. Some of these women out here, they will mark you, they will put something on you, but then you don't need to be foolish and fall for the trap. Don't be foolish. They're foolish. They get out there, and my dad used to be an agent. He and his law partner, and he said for a sports agent, he said what they would do is the other agents would give them a white woman, buy them a house, the mama a house and a car, and they throw the white women out there. You see a lot of male athletes with white women, and then the brothers are just so caught up in this. They think that they're gladiators on the field. They think that they're no longer black. They've reached this, like almost like P. Diddy. I watched his documentary. He thinks he's got a God complex. He thinks he's risen above all of us. And it's like, look, you you are black in America. We're in a racist white supremacist country. You can only go so far. And if you do anything, you're gonna have a magnifying glass on you. If you do anything to step out of line, you can best bet they're gonna clap down on you and just try to destroy you. They did it to Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby. I mean, P. Diddy, I don't know if y'all saw the documentary yet. I mean, it's a mess. He need to atone for his evil ways and pay off all the money he owes to the people that he wronged, not the ones that are just lying and jumping on the bandwagon. Same with Bill Cosby. They need to make an apology, pay off the people they owe, and come back to the black community and invest in the black community and lift us up. That's what we need right now. We don't need this. We don't need this. It's crazy. It's craziness.
okay. Well, thank you
My
very.
question is, how many cautionary tales does it take for us to learn a very basic fundamental lesson here in America, which is that we can't do everything that they do. We just can't. I mean, I was raised that way, that you had to be doubly smarter, right? In order to
That's
get at the
right.
table, get in the room,
Right. Me too.
correct? So I just wonder, and I think we're having a great conversation on both sides of the issue. But just how many cautionary tales does it take for us to, get this?
Wow.
Right.
Hey, but the
Um,
next, we got several more topics we need to cover real quickly. Attorney Banks, there was a seismic transfer of power in Miami this week. Um, for the last 30 years, South Florida, one of the most populated area, the Gold Coast area in Florida is probably about 45% of the population in Florida. Florida got what, about 22, 23 million, but about half of that is on the Gold Coast, starting north of West Palm Beach down through Miami. And Miami is heavily populated with a lot of folks from Cuba. And so for 30 years, they've had Republican mayors. And now this week, we saw a dramatic shift. I think the Democrat in the Miami race, I think she got like 60% of the vote or something, and Trump was back at, let me see, the Miami race was up. And it was a shocking result, Attorney Banks. Did you follow that story this week?
Yes, I did. And I was somewhat surprised that I hadn't been following the run up to that story because I was surprised to hear that a Democratic mayor, Higgins, I believe her name is,
yeah, Elaine, it was Eileen Higgins. Yes.
Higgins was elected first time in 30 years. She ran on affordability, cost of living, and everyday issues impacting the citizens of Miami. And so I thought that it was another bright spot in the bright spots that we're seeing across the nation now, including the Indiana Senate rejection of the redistricting map. And so I was very pleased to see the results of that election.
Hey, do
Oh,
you
me
think
too.
that
Yes,
it
I
has
thought that
something
was
to do with
great.
the immigration enforcement? Uh, you know, in other words, I saw a lady who was strongly in favor of President Trump, and then her husband got arrested by ICE.
Well, certainly Robin can speak to the plethora of immigration issues. And, as we see ACA credits set to expire, as of December 31st, the end of this year, doubling and potentially tripling premiums for 24 million Americans across this country. We've already seen the highest cuts to Medicaid just back in July with this big, beautiful bill, and cuts to SNAP benefits. I'm hoping that we're seeing cost in stores increase. We're seeing um, people making decisions to go from buying brand name food in stores to generics, to some people in some communities of color making a decision whether they will eat or their children will eat. Um, I'm seeing these bright spots across the country with the Senate vote, um, as well as this mayoral election. We saw some elections a couple weeks ago. We saw the rejection of the indictment of Letitia James. It's now been two times the grand jury has rejected an action to indict her. And we're seeing citizens across this country saying, this is not what we voted for. If they voted for President Trump, they didn't vote for Black Hawk helicopters to descend on housing complexes in Illinois and having residents pulled out, children naked and zip tied, and this frankly illegal immigration enforcement.
Well, you had a lot of bad things happen in Chicago in terms of ICE. I remember that was a storyline. It's like that we're using the military uh, to somehow declare war on American citizens. It was a shameful act.
Right.
I watch these things unfold on TV every night, and it's just heartbreaking to me to see
Horrible.
so many people's rights being violated by the federal government. Every day is a new city, and they're arresting people, they're picking them up, they're physically abusing them. And what I suspect is that there's going to be massive, massive amount of lawsuits that will evolve from this misconduct. And I
Right.
think that we'll have litigation on this for the next decade, because what we're seeing now is an erosion of America's constitutional rights and protection. Like, for example, Attorney Banks and McCoy, we see the United States, for example, bombing small boats in Caribbean Sea from Venezuela, right? And they say that they declare what, an act of war on a democratic nation because a so-called drug crisis, right? Well, the
Right.
problem is, and we know this to be a truism, that if a person is typically convicted of a drug offense, they have a set sentence. It may be anywhere from probation up to maybe 20 years. Now, if it involved murder somebody, that's a different issue. But the point I'm making is they don't typically receive the death penalty, right? So we see our U.S. military enacting the death penalty on other civilians.
Right. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. I was teaching a class on law and the African American experience, and we were going through the US history. We were using the race law book, and then we read about the history of the country, the history of Black folks, slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights era up till now. And this is like one of those times you read about. We're all living in one of those times. I'm almost like I would like to go to Germany and look and see at the museums that they preserved of the Nazis, because it's like we're having the same, it's like craziness. We're having the American apartheid experience. It's like the people, some of the people in the current administration, they're taking the Constitution and ripping it up or wiping their butts with it. It's like you just running up on people and locking them up and without due process. The Constitution guarantees you the right. You have the right to. It's like they're just rolling up on people in boats, killing them. That you have to see evidence. We don't even know what all the. Surely there are fishermen that are in this that are out there fishing. Not everybody that's in the Caribbean Sea is a drug dealer. And I would be, if I was somebody that was a shipping person, I would be scared to even be going in the Caribbean Sea right now, because you don't know. I wouldn't even be going on any cruises. I'd be scared because you don't know what America is just looking like a mess. It's embarrassing. I read Omarosa's book, where she was talking about Trump, how he was, and then how he became. And he's got some people around him that are Lulu, and whoever the Lulu, before he would do a purging. All the Lulu people got to go. And then we don't even have a Supreme Court to really check him. We're just kind of beholden to Congress and the Senate. Michigan, we have candidates that are running for office. I'm hoping, like what past President Banks was saying about, because some of the blue waves that's happened in Miami, New York. I'm hoping Michigan, we need it. Michigan is kind of purple. It's like on the east, it's blue, and there's other pockets of blue, but then up north, out west, it's red. So it's like we need as much help as we can get to get some.
But counsel, wait a second. In Michigan last year in the presidential election, the Palestinian folks in Michigan turned against the Democratic Party. Have that been reconciled yet in your state? I mean, because once the Trump regime took over, they basically carpet bombed that area, and all I could see on TV was mass destruction. And I saw hospitals, I saw everybody, getting bombed. How do those folks in Palestine feeling now about this situation?
Well, I would first say this. I wouldn't make such a broad stroke and say it's fat Palestinian. Like Michigan, we do have one of the highest Arab populations in the country. You have people who are Lebanese, Yemenis. So you have, in Dearborn and different parts of Michigan. And so, but yes, I know one of my assistants, she's Arab, and then she was telling me that there were emails being put out there encouraging people in the Muslim community to vote for the third party person. I know that our Congresswoman, Congresswoman Tlaib, there are people that were upset at her because they felt she should have come out and actively supported Kamala. And I had talked to Congresswoman Tlaib, and she said that privately she supported Kamala, but that she was dealing in the Arab community with people who their loved ones were being killed by under the Biden administration, and they were upset. But I said to her, they're upset, but don't they understand that Trump helped to make the situation worse in the Middle East, and he had a Muslim ban. Like my assistant couldn't even come here until Biden got in there, and he, changing the capital, Tel Aviv, and he propped up Netanyahu, who is a war criminal, so that he could go and commit the genocide on the Palestinian people. And if you voted for Trump, you're going to make it worse. But people, again, their relatives are dying, they're having funerals, they're emotional. But it's like Black folk, most of us, we told everybody, we voted for Kamala. We have been here, we built this country, we know better than anybody. All these other folks, some of our newer immigrants, they learn, and they benefited from what we went through, and they should have listened to us. Even our white brothers and sisters, they should have listened to us, because now everybody is suffering. For me, I'm a proud American. I don't want America to fall. I'm on this ship. We're all on this ship right now. So we need to do prayer, whatever it is. Get whoever's around Trump that's making him going around being the racist daddy. They need to rein him in. Somebody got to come back and focus on affordability, healthcare. I just did my healthcare with my insurance person, and it went up. And it's like going to the grocery stores, like you said, it's expensive. I can only imagine, families with kids, like President Banks said, like deciding between whether they're going to eat and their kids are going to eat. And then I just got my vaccines and my shots, and just this RFK Jr., this craziness. America.
No, wait a second, but here's the problem though with what you said about your friend Congresswoman Lee. If she had endorsed Kamala Harris in Michigan, if she'd had her coattail, if in her congressional district, if Harris would have got the same number of votes that she got, Harris would have won Michigan. And that's what I was concerned about. I was looking at her results. In her district, she got about 60-some% of the vote. And whereas Harris, was nowhere near that. And so my problem is when she came out and was openly campaigning saying, I think vote for nobody or something goofy. It was something that they did I thought was out of the ordinary.
Some people were saying uncommitted. And it's like, if you do uncommitted, you might as well just give your vote to Donald Trump. Come on. I know I would like to have a third party, but come on.
Yeah, she got 69% of the vote in her congressional district. If Harris would have got 69% with her, Harris wins Michigan. It's just that simple. Harris got nowhere near that vote total in her district because, I didn't understand that strategy, So regardless of what she was telling you, I just thought that was just a terrible position they took based on the fact that the alternative would have been much worse, and they knew that. It was not like it was something that they were guessing. They had a history of him dealing with the Netanyahu, and they knew exactly what he'd done before. So I don't understand her position.
I think that I can't speak for Congresswoman Tlaib. I can give you her information. Maybe you can invite her on and she can talk directly for why she made the decision she made. I know that there are some Democrats that are upset with her. I know she's a very passionate advocate for her people and for constituents in her district. But my thing is this, we Black folk, we know, we've already seen this movie. We've already experienced it. I was riding with Kamala. I just finished listening to her book, 107 Days. And she was talking about, she is phenomenal. She is overqualified. And for her to do what she did in 107 days is amazing. But it's like our country, and look at what Michelle said. She said, we're not ready. Y'all not ready for a woman president. It may end up being a Republican, a moderate Republican woman that we get as our first woman, because our country, it is a mess. It's a hot mess. It's like the young people need to wake up. And there's some of us older folk. I'm not that old, but I'm just saying we need to pass the torch on to them. Trump, it looks like he's about to fall over. They need to push him out the way and get somebody in there that's more centrist, that's for the people. Did follow with Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, what she said. She's reading the tea leaves. A lot of his people are starting to abandon him. But the thing is, he's still in that White House. So we need to have the rational people that are around him need to take over the reins and just to help steer the ship into the right direction. It's like we Black folks, we headed for a crash and we on the ship. And it's like, we don't want to have to jump off the ship. We want the ship to be righted and to put this country. We have all the right things here in this country to make it it's the wealthiest, most successful country in the world. But you're stepping out all the immigrants. Who gonna do the work? Some of these young people, look, you can't even get them to come to work on time. So come on, you got immigrants. They hungry. They want to work. They're diligent. So it's like, who gonna do the work? We ship all these immigrants out. Who gonna do the work in America? Make sense to me.
Now, Attorney Banks, one of the things that was important that got overlooked was the fact that was there an attack on the African American holidays and Juneteenth and park passes? Tell about that story. Go ahead.
Well, first I wanted to say in response to what we're discussing currently is that, what we the people have to understand that we have all the power, right? And so whether it is the Muslims in Michigan, or as Pierre has pointed out, the Somalians that stood for Trump in the last election, um, we're all being attacked, right? And part of the plan, a large part of the plan, is to keep us all divided. And so when we come together, and let me just say, after the inauguration, when President Trump began through his executive orders to execute everything that had been promised in Project 2025, and people were responding, with, desperation. My response was, and I'll use the vernacular, okay, was, well, y'all didn't want a democracy, and so we haven't turned our backs on our brothers and sisters who are now learning that, this administration is attacking schools, pulling, uh, traumatizing students by, going into schools and other places of worship and courthouses across the nation. And so people are, I'm hoping, understanding now that this is really not what they voted for. But to your point, the question that you raised, again, just another exercise of egotism and abuse of power. The president has placed his name on a annual park pass to the national parks. It placed his name and picture on this annual pass, and has removed from the national park schedule the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, as well as Juneteenth, as days on the schedule where tourists can be admitted free to the parks. Now, they have been sued, and I'm happy, again, this is another bright light, that there is a organization called the Biological Diversity Organization that has sued the Department of Interior to say that by placing Trump's picture in this way on the park pass, that they have violated federal law, and they're politicizing the national parks, which belong to everybody in this country. So that's what that story's about, Nathaniel. I'm glad that this group, this organization, has stepped up and said, no, this is unacceptable. And they've filed an action in the federal district courts of DC. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I'd like to thank our callers for calling in today. And we didn't get any of our callers in South Florida, but I know that you guys text me. So thank you for listening to our show today. Thank Attorney Robin McCoy, our special guest, in the middle of the oven in Michigan. With
Pray for us. Pray for us in Michigan. Pray for America. Pray for us, football.
Yes.
And of course, our superstar panel, Attorney Banks. Thank you, everyone, and our producer. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you next Saturday. Have a blessed weekend. Take care now.
Everybody have a blessed weekend. Great seeing you, Attorney McCoy.
Yeah, likewise, President Banks.